Hello, in this video I'll be showing you some of the gameplay of Trivia Dungeon. There will be 2 players in this game. I'll be playing against myself, and as I play I'll be showing you some of the situations that you may encounter along the way. Before starting, you want to fill in the boss names on your scorecards and decide how many hit points each boss will have. You can make up your own amounts, or you can use the guide on the back of the game rules pamphlet. So here is a scorecard. And you've got the minor bosses. You've got the Panther, the Wolf, the Cerberus, the Griffin, and then the final boss is the Dragon. And you'll notice that the minor bosses all have half the amount of hit points as the final boss. Now, how did I decide that? It's all based on the dice that I'm using. I've got a 6-sided and a 12-sided. And based on the game rules pamphlet, the guide on the back, here's the game rules pamphlet. Here's the guide on the back. If I've got a 6-sided and a 12-sided, that means the minor bosses will have 30 points and the final boss will have 60. And I made this to kind of balance out the game, because if you're using just say some 6-sided dice and you make the bosses have 50, the minor bosses have 50 hit points and the final boss have 100, it's going to take forever to finish the game. But if you say have 2 20-sided dice and you make the minor boss's hit points 15 and the final boss's hit points 30, you're going to finish the game too quickly and you're not going to get anything out of it. So this guide is to help balance the game and make it last long enough but not too long. Okay, so let's start the game. I've got the blue player and the yellow player, and I'll just start with the blue player. Who goes first? That's something that can be easily decided, so that's just left up to whoever's playing the game. Okay, so I'm going to roll, and I got 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I land on an empty space, so nothing happens. So the yellow player's turn is next. Roll again. I get 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's an empty space also, so nothing happens. Now let's say one of the players landed on, let's just say this was 5 and they got 6 instead of 5 like before, so they landed on this one. Now if they landed on that one, the red pentagon, what that means is they have to answer a trivia card correctly before they can move, before they can get a turn again. So right then and there, I would pull up a trivia card, or the other player that they're playing against would pull up a trivia card for them and read it off to them. How is the energy produced by solar panels stored? And the answer would be by using batteries. So if the yellow player said by using batteries, or said batteries, or something similar to that effect, then that means they are allowed to move on their next turn. All right, so right now it's the blue player's turn, and they roll. They get 3 and 8. That's 11 spaces. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Now the blue player just landed on a red pentagon, so that means the yellow player would pull up a card for them and read off the question. Can solar panels still work on a cloudy day? If the blue player says yes, then on their next turn they can move on. If they said no, well, they stick around on that spot until they get one of these trivia cards correct. But let's just say they answered it correctly. That means on their next turn they can move on. So now it's the yellow player's turn, and they get 4 and 6, so that's 10 spots. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's an empty spot. Now, just to make this video quicker, let's just go over all of these different symbols. Let's say the yellow player landed on a green space. That means immediately, right then and there, they can move ahead 6 spots. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right there. Okay, now let's say they landed on a yellow arrow pointing backward. That means if that's what they rolled and that's what they landed on, they immediately have to move back 6 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If they landed on a black diamond, what that means is they lose their next turn. So the blue player would go, and they would, since this is a 2-player game, the blue player would actually get to go twice before the yellow player would get to go on again. The blue circle means they get to roll the dice again for a second move. So let's say the yellow player landed on the blue circle. That means they get to roll again, and they get 16. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So now here they are. Now this pattern, the blue, red, green, yellow, black, blue, green, yellow, black, blue, red, green. It basically goes on and on all the way throughout the whole board game. And so players just move on, and they either move forward, they move backward, they lose a turn, they roll again. They might have to answer a trivia card. All depends on what they land on. Now, just for the sake of making this video not too long, let's go ahead and move the players up closer to the first minor boss. Okay, so let's just say they're right here. And I roll, let's say I'm the blue player, and I roll. Even if I roll something big like 11, and I've only got 2 spaces until I get to the minor boss, I can't go past that minor boss until I beat that minor boss. So I got 11, that means I go ahead and go into the minor boss's little area, and immediately what I do is the yellow player or someone else in the game has to start reading off trivia cards. Now, let's say this one for instance. What element is used in solar panels to help convert sunlight into electricity? Let's say the blue player gets that right and they say silicon. Okay, well if they get it right, what they get to do is they get to roll the dice to see how many hit points they take off of the panther. So they rolled a 2 and a 6. So here's the panther, and if they rolled a 2 and a 6, that means they took off 8 points from the 30. So what are they down to now? The panther is now down to, and if you need to, you can put an 8 there to show what they rolled, and they can subtract that and put 22. Now if they get it right, they can keep going. They can keep answering trivia questions as long as they keep getting them right. So let's say they roll again, so what they would do is they would pull up the other player would pull up another trivia card and ask them this question. In power plants, whether it is from nuclear, fossil fuels, hydroelectric, wind, or geothermal energy, how is the electricity produced? And the answer is a turbine turns a generator producing the electricity. So if the player got that question right, they would get to roll again to see how many points they get to take off. So this is 6 and 9. That's 15 points they get to take off of that boss. So 15, 22 take away 15, that leaves 7 points left on that panther. And let's say they keep going. They get to read off another trivia card and to see if they can beat that boss. So how can carbon dioxide emissions affect the world? Carbon dioxide causes a greenhouse effect. Let's say they got that right. They're on a winning streak. So they roll again, and they get 4 and 7. That's 11. Now, that's well over the 7 that they have left on that boss. And what that means is that boss is now dead. And they can now move on. So what that means is on their next turn, they can roll the dice to move on. and now it's the yellow player's turn. So there's going to be periods where maybe some of the players are just sitting there reading off cards to one single person. But let's just say, for instance, and I'll use this other scorecard. Let's say, for instance, the yellow player got moved up here with the blue player eventually, and I'm just going to make this quick. Let's say they rolled and they got one right. They took off 10 points and the Panther was down to 20, but then they got the next one wrong. If they got the next one wrong, then the blue player gets to roll, and that's 8 and 6. They get to roll and move out of that space, and the yellow player has to wait until their next turn before they get to try and beat that boss. So it's all about knowing the answers and having a good winning streak, I guess, as far as answering those trivia cards. So 14, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. All right, so blue player moved, and now it's back to yellow. And they're still stuck trying to fight that minor boss. So the blue player would read off a card to him, and it says, what are the rows of the periodic table called? The periods. So if the yellow player got that right, they would get to roll, and that's 7 and 3. That's 10, so they take away 10 from that 20, and that boss is down to 10 points now. And because they got it right, they would get the blue player would draw a card for them and read it off. How does reactivity in metals change in the periodic table going from top to bottom? What goes on is the reactivity increases. So if the yellow player got that right, they would get to roll again. And hopefully they roll something high enough to beat that boss and they can actually get out of that arena. All right, so that's 2 and 5. So they only took off 7 points from that boss, and that boss has 3 points left. So that means I have to answer another card correctly. So here's the next one. How long does it take for fossil fuels to form? Millions of years. Let's say that yellow player got that right. They get to roll again. Hopefully it's something greater, 3 or greater. And they got 1 and 3, which is 4. So that means that boss is now dead. So they can move on. So they have to wait until their next turn to roll. And now it's blue player's turn to roll again. And they got 9. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. They land on a yellow arrow, so they have to move back 6 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So they didn't really get to go any farther ahead than what they were before. All right, so now it's back to yellow player's turn, and they can roll to get out of that arena. So that's 12 and 3. That's 15 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. They landed on a blue circle, so they actually get to roll again and maybe get ahead of that blue player. So here's 2 and 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So now they're ahead of that blue player. So even though they got left behind at first, and the blue player was actually beat that boss first, the yellow player is now ahead. And it's all because of the dice and the possibilities that may happen along the way. All right, so beating each one of these bosses these minor bosses is pretty much the same all the way around. But once you get to the final boss, once you get here, you're basically doing the same thing that you did with the minor bosses. You just have to answer a whole lot more on the trivia to beat that final boss. And whoever beats that final boss first and kills that dragon all the way down to 0 is the player that wins. And so, for instance, the blue player could get here first, and could be battling and answering trivia cards, but get all the way down to maybe 1 point left on that dragon. Sorry about that. So the blue player could get here all the way to that dragon and have maybe 1 point left on that dragon and get the next trivia card wrong and not get to go. And the yellow player ends up moving into the arena. And the yellow player could have a winning streak on the trivia cards and answer one after the other correctly and roll and roll and roll and roll and end up killing that dragon first, even though the blue player got there first and even though the blue player got all the way down to 1 hit point left. And the yellow player could win simply by knowing more of the trivia. And that's pretty much how the game is played. And based on the size of the dice that you use and the knowledge of the players depends on how fast the game moves. And this is a large game board with 245 of these squares that they have to move along. And so depending on how long your class period is, maybe is something that you can use to decide how big of a dice that you want to use or how many dice you want to use. Some people might not finish the game if you have dice that are too small. You may have people that finish the game way too fast if you have dice that are too big. So that's something to consider when you're playing this game. But that's pretty much it. I hope you enjoy Trivia Dungeon. I hope your students enjoy Trivia Dungeon. And there are expansion packs available. Sorry about that. There are expansion packs available, and just look on my store and you'll find them. Thanks a lot. Bye.